Hi everyone, you're listening to Achieve Balance with Dr. Arminta, a show brought to you weekly to help you be healthier, happier, and more vitalistic next year than you are this year. You can find us at achievebalancechiro.com/podcast. And you can find us on Facebook as well. We are looking forward to helping you be healthier in your future. Thanks for listening. Now let's start the show. Welcome back, everyone. So today we're going to talk about stress. Let's talk about stress, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about stress. I wanted to add that in there just to get your attention, get a little lightheartedness over a topic that can be really heavy. So when it comes to stress, we need to know what is the response of the human body? What is the stress response? How does stress impact us? What is it? Because it's not going away, but how can we actually adapt to it easier or not allow it to impact our health to the tune that it is doing to our general society right now? So stress can be really lots and lots of different things. From a negative thought can be stress. A automobile accident can be stress. A slip and a fall can be stress. Chemical, physical, emotional, basically. And it can be the food that we eat is stressing us, the lack of water that we drink, the lack of movement of our spines and our bodies, and the air that we breathe and the amount of toxicity that an individual is exposed to is so prevalent, let alone what we do to ourselves emotionally now that we are so technologically advanced. So in today's day and age, we don't rest. We don't recover, especially in the United States. In certain countries, they have the siestas where they close their businesses between like 1 and 5, and everybody uses that time to recoup in the middle of their day to help downregulate their stress responses. And there's some really interesting studies over there in terms of the weight of individuals due to that and how the body actually can live a longer life if you actually take some more rest. And with stress of us, we have the deadlines for our work, the expectations that we're expected to live up to, like if we don't respond to a text message or an email right away, there can be thought that we're, slacking, if you would. And we need to take some pressure off ourselves when it comes to that. So we'll talk about how to set some boundaries with that and talk about some solutions to managing stress after we talk about what it does to the human body, because we need to understand, in my opinion, the physiology of how stress impacts the human body. So when we have a stress response, whether that be running from a threat of like a tiger, let's pretend like we're back in our Paleolithic days with our species, but it could be the McDonald's cheeseburger, the negative thought, the deadline, the ding on your phone from the latest and greatest email that you're going to be getting. But what that does is it actually stimulates your nervous system to perform what's called a sympathetic response. And the sympathetic response stimulates something called the intermedullolateral tract, which stimulates part of your brain to release chemical sensations. So what it does is it turns on all your catabolic systems in your body, like heart rate, vascularity, blood pressure, and then it decreases all of the anabolic activities in the body, like digestion, sex drive, growth hormones, cellular immunity, because you don't need to worry about those things to survive. It also sends messages, whenever you have the stress response, it sends messages directly to your adrenal glands. And adrenal fatigue is a huge issue right now in our society because of this it's this effect on the adrenal glands that's causing adrenal fatigue. They are being used and they're chugging out so much neurochemical information and hormones to your body so your body can survive. And so when your adrenals are stimulated, you produce something called catecholamines, which is like epinephrine and norepinephrine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and that happens from the medulla portion of the adrenal gland. And then from the cortex portion, you release something called glucocorticoid, which is also known as cortisol, and we've all heard of that. So you're pumping that out of your adrenal glands, all of this catecholamines and this cortisol, and what it actually does to your body is it stimulates heart rate and increases your cardiac output. So your heart rate goes up, your stroke volume goes up, and this is why so much stress response, this is why they'll put you through a stress test to see if your heart is healthy. It's so much of that, ability of our body is to adapt has to do with the vascular system. And if you're overstimulating the vascular system, we can have big problems such as heart attacks, heart disease. We can also be having things like stroke due to these issues. And those things are things we don't need to mess with. If you can do anything to downregulate that, holy heavens, please do it. So they also stimulate the emotional portion of the brain. And so your body can remember it actually hyperstimulates your brain to remember the stressful event. And the reason that it does that is because, next time you're at that place, event, things, your brain will remind you, hey, you're at the watering hole where the tiger was last time. And that causes this feedback loop. Now, once we have this feedback loop of that stimulating that emotional anxiety portion of the brain, it actually causes neuroplasticity along that portion of the brain. And what neuroplasticity is how basically the science behind neuroplasticity is that neurons that fire together, they start to wire together. And then we create a stress feedback loop. And this becomes the way that we are. We have anxiety all the time because it is neuroplasticized into our body. And this is why it's so important to make sure that we can downregulate that system from the inside out. And we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes as well. So when it comes to the catecholamines and the cortisol, it also stimulates the response of different HDL receptors and LDL receptors within the body as well. So you actually, cortisol acts on the liver, which downregulates the HDL gene, the gene for HDL production, and reduces the number of LDL receptors so that you can have more LDL in the bloodstream, because if you get bitten by the tiger, you have clotting factors. And then you also have, cortisol is also a precursor for a lot of steroid-based hormones, which you need for reactivity if you're going to have this. This is why cholesterol levels are so high, and this is why the statin epidemic is so big, because we have such a high stress response. And so instead of taking the statin drug, which we're going to do a whole show on statins, because I am so tired of seeing unnecessarily prescribed medications that is also causing downregulation of other systems in our body and has no proof that it actually prevents heart attack or heart disease. So stay tuned for something along those lines in the future. But what happens is your body needs those hormones to be able to regulate. And then it also, what it does is it increases your stress levels, which also make you crave sugars and more fats. And when you combine the sugar and fat combination, that's going to increase your inflammation, because refined sugars are your most inflammatory form of food in the entire world. So what we need to talk about is just basic summary of the stress response and what that does to the human body. And then what are we going to do, and what is it called to, we're going to put a different spin on how to have some solutions for this. So basically, when you have a stress response, there's many, many different things that can happen. I'm going to list off almost 20 different results of chronic stress patterns, which I honestly believe that the majority, if not almost all the population of the United States has chronic stress issues. And I am included in that, So we are not immune to any of this, even if we are working really hard to decrease the response, because it's everywhere, you guys. It's everywhere. So we need to do our job to ensure that we are doing what we can to offset it, which we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. Solutions. So whenever you have your stress response or chronic stress response, you're going to increase your cortisol and your catecholamines, which are also going to increase your heart rate, increase your vasoconstriction, and increase your blood pressure. You're also going to increase your blood sugar levels so that you can have the energy to expel. So your diabetes is linked to having issues with chronic stress as well. Same things we talked about, the lipids and the cholesterol levels. And you increase your clotting factors. And the interesting part about the cholesterol levels is it increases LDL and decreases HDL. So it increases the quote bad stuff and decreases the quote good stuff. But I think that we actually should probably do a show just on cholesterol because it is a thick topic. Also, it decreases, downregulates and degrades protein in the muscles and the connective tissues. It causes insulin resistance, which makes you more likely to have insulin problems or glucose problems or actual weight issues. And then it increases your feelings of stress, fear, anxiety, and depression. It actually decreases your short-term memory loss. And there's some studies out there that is really interesting that it also talks about how it can decrease the actual size of the brain itself. And the hippocampus will actually shrink when it comes to chronic stress issues. So it increases your sensitivity to sensory systems, which include pain responses. So when an individual is under an immense amount of stress, pain will actually show up in their body in different forms because you're going to be more pro-inflammatory and you're going to have different noxious stimuli to the brain, which stimulates that pain sensation response to tell the brain, hey, I hurt here, pay attention to me. It might just be asking you to decrease your overall stress, responses as well. It decreases cellular immunity, so your immune system tanks. It also decreases anabolic hormones like growth hormones and testosterone and luteinizing hormones. So it totally tanks your libido if you have chronic stress issues. And it can also lead to bone loss and muscle fiber changes. And it decreases your serotonin levels in your brain too. So it really wreaks havoc on the entire neuroimmunological cardiovascular systems, let alone we haven't even talked about what it can do to your gut. And we need to do a whole show on gut as well. So I'll save that for when it comes to that. So whenever we have stress, science is starting to create this term for this, and it's called an allostatic load. So an allostatic load is the term that science has now started to create that actually terms the bioaccumulation of stress. Basically, it's the chronic wear and tear on the human body that accumulates over time and represents the physiological consequences of chronic exposure to fluctuating stress responses in the neural endocrine response. So your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. So it's the buildup over time. The way that my mentor, Dr. James Chestnut, he actually runs the Wellness Practitioner Program out of the International Chiropractic Association. So he's one of the people that I have learned a lot from over the last several years. And he talks and references this in terms of rocks in your backpack. So think about yourself as, you're in a pool, you're treading water, and you have this backpack on, and you have rocks that are being put into your backpack as you go along. And in our world today, they're never ending, you guys. They are to the point where it is affecting everything that we do. I mean, the amount of technology that we have and the responsibilities and the go. And that's just the emotional aspect. I mean, what about the toxicity component of the neural stress response with all of the pesticides and the chemicals that we're putting in our food and the bioengineering of our food and the air that we're breathing? It is a bombardment. And so you add all these rocks to your backpack, and eventually you're going to start to sink below water. You won't be able to tread anymore. And that's when the bioaccumulation or the allostatic load over transcends the adaptability of the organism or of the individual. So you are going to start to show physiological symptoms, and that can show up as pain. It can show up as visceral issues, blood pressure issues. I mean, we talked about the cascade of effects that it has that can take place on the human body, and no wonder that's why all of those things that we talked about with like the increased blood pressure and the lipids and blood sugar and the decreasing of the emotional responses, no wonder this is the top prescribed medications in the world. So what can we do about it? And that's really the biggest thing that I want to talk about in terms of what is the solution to this major issue that we have going on. And in terms of what we see and what we do every day, chiropractic plays a critical role, and it's imperative that you get your nervous system evaluated and maintained on a regular basis, because chiropractic, whenever it comes to your gas pedal, brake pedal, sympathetic versus parasympathetic load, it allows your body to be more adaptable. It breaks the chronic stress response, because when you have a stress response, it's a chemical cascade. And when you get constant bombardment of this neural cascade, what happens in your brain neurology is that neurons that fire together, they start to wire together, and then these stress pathways become connected stronger. And so your body actually prefers to be stressed out. And what happens whenever you would get adjusted is it breaks that neural pathway, and it allows the brain-body connection to be heightened, and it allows the neuroplasticity of the stress response to be broken. And that is critical in terms of how your body's adaptability is. And so in my opinion, chiropractic is hands down the most important part when it talks about down regulating your stress response, because not only does it deal directly with the vagus nerve, which we will do a whole show based off the vagus nerve, but it also deals with the proprioceptive response back up to the brain. So you have twofold in how this is changing how stress affects your neuroendocrine system. It's amazing. It's absolutely phenomenal. But there are other things that you also need to do, because of the world and the day and the age that we live in today is so critical that you take care of what you can take care of. So obviously, I'm going to tell you to get your nervous system checked and your spine checked to ensure that you can properly adapt to your stresses. But also, we need to talk about what can you do in the four walls of your household and your world that can help downregulate your stress response. One of them is you can stop overcommitting to yourself. And I think that that's a huge thing that we do in our world today. I don't know, speaking from women to other women that might be listening, I know that we really put a lot of pressure on ourselves as moms, if you're a mom. And it is a critical thing that you can do is to stop saying yes to things that aren't serving you and your values. And so I think that we can all look at our schedule and our calendar and say, hey, what am I actually committing myself to, and what is taking away from me and my authentic self and upregulating my stress response. And only you can do that as an individual. Another thing that you can do, which is really critical, is to have meditation as part of your daily practice. And this takes some time and some practice. This is actually admittedly my weakest point in terms of my overall wellness routine. I am a go, super high driver personality. And so this is really one of my bigger challenges, is to slow down and actually not do. And I think that we need to practice this as a society, not just on one-to-one, but if we could do this as a collective whole, what could happen to the health of our world? There are some cultures out there that take siestas. It's happening less and less now as a collective whole in the world, but some cultures that everything closes. You can't even get gas between 1 and 5 p.m. in some cultures. So it's really amazing the science that comes out of that too, that it actually states that these older, the men in these cultures are living longer and have more vibrancy at their older ages as well, and that have less demential change or Alzheimer's type changes to their brain. So I think that that's a really critical thing. So taking care of your mind is huge, and there's so many ways to do this. Meditation is such a huge science these days, and it's really amazing on how it can also help change those pathways and allow your body to downregulate the stress response. We also need to look into how are we moving our bodies. If we are moving our bodies, we can be more adaptive. If we're consistently moving our bodies, I should say, because consistency is really key. But if you're consistently moving your body, you're actually allowing your cells to be healthier, and you have a stronger resistance, especially if you're doing any kind of strength training, because you're more adaptable to the physical stressors like falls, sports injuries, automobile accidents. And if you have to sit at a desk all day, you absolutely need to move your body on a regular basis to off-regulate the amount of sitting. We're not supposed to sit as a culture. It is not part of the design, but we have technologically advanced ourselves to de-evolving by sitting the amount that we do. And it's critical that we off-play that. So making sure that you're moving your body, whether it be yoga, Pilates, whatever fits you and your personality or your desire. But I just want you to have some form of desire to move your body in some form or fashion. Another thing that is absolutely critical, and this just piggybacks on our eat well, move well, think well. And, if you are putting toxic food into your body is having a stress response just from what you're putting into it. And you think you're giving it fuel. And it's really an important thing that you look at, what are you fueling your body with? And is it actually giving it to, does your body recognize it as food? Because if your body doesn't recognize it as food, if you can't pronounce what's on that label, then your body doesn't know how to pronounce it either. And it will create a stress response because your body has to figure out what's useful out of that you put into your body. Can it pull what it can, because our bodies are so smart. It pulls what it needs, and then it takes away what it doesn't. And so I think that that's a really critical thing to look at, is how healthy is your food. I always tell my patients that if your food doesn't rot, that you will. So I'd like it to be fresh fiber first, and I'd like it to be as organic and non-toxic as possible. And again, it comes with consistency. If this isn't how you're used to eating, it's really important that you look at how you can start to make those changes. And it can be subtle at first, but then you start to build on it, and you're going to also help your body downregulate that stress response. And I'm going to end, because we can go on and on and on. There are so many ways and different avenues for you to start looking at how to downregulate your stress response, from eating better, moving better, thinking better, obviously, and most importantly, the chiropractic component of it. But one of my favorites that really helps me feel good on the inside, and I know it absolutely can change how our cells function, is the form of gratitude. And I think that it's imperative that we look at what is good in our lives, because we are trained to look at what is not good in our lives and to focus on that. And then what we actually do is we commit to the subconscious mind to bring more of that stuff that we do not desire into our lives instead of what we do desire. So I encourage you to meditate on what is good in your world. And if you're having a hard time doing that, because we all have problems, we all go through, junk in our world, but did you get to go and turn on the faucet today and, have running water? Do you have shoes on your feet? Do you have food in your refrigerator? Do we live in, an amazing space and an amazing world? Are we loved unconditionally? Yes. All of those things. So get down to the stuff that really matters instead of the stuff that might not matter. And form some gratitude around your day. And that definitely helps downregulate that stress response. And if you haven't gotten checked by a chiropractor, I am so encourage it. It is so critical that you do. And if you are not in Columbia, Missouri, please contact us and we will contact you or connect you with chiropractors in your area that will check you, not for your back pain or your neck pain or your headaches, but for your stress response and making sure that you're more adaptable to your environment. So I hope you got something out of today, and I hope that you can put just 1-2 of these tools into work and see how it affects your vitality. And I hope that you come back and hear us again. We look forward to you coming on to the next episode. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Hi guys, Dr. Arminta here. Thank you so much for listening. I hope today's episode brought you information to help you eat better, move better, think better, and take care of the true root of your health issues. You can find us online at achievebalancechiropractic.com/podcasts, and you can find us on social media as well. We look forward to having you here the next episode, and we look forward to helping you create a healthier future tomorrow.